Since last night. I think it might be an inch if I had everything together.
Almost on the
Okay.
nose.
All right. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Madison County Drainage Board for June 14th to order. Would you please stand and join the pledge to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We don't have any minutes to approve this morning. So then first, oh, that's all right. We memorize it all anyway, right? The first item are claims submitted 6/6/23, payable 6/20/23. I don't know if you've all had a chance to look those over. They did get an email, so if you want to take a moment to look it over or have any questions, otherwise we'll entertain a motion for approval of claims.
I make a motion to accept claims.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Thank you. Next item we have are two plats this morning. First one is Administrative Plat 2023-P-010. And is that the one that you looked at, Nathan?
Yeah. It's the one that's up on the screen.
Is there anyone here representing that plat this morning? Okay, would you come on down, sir? And just give us your name and address, please, and explain what your project amounts to.
My name is Matt Summers. Address for the company is P.O. Box 237 Pendleton, and it's to put 4 new custom homes on this.
Okay. Could you kind of describe, I think Nathan had a couple questions as to how you're dividing it or what, you can walk over to the screen and point it out too if you'd like.
It should be on the primary plat. We're just doing 4 individuals, and they're roughly like around 3.6 or 3.7 acres.
I see a drainage easement to the east. Where's its outlet? Does it stop at the property line, or is there an outlet there?
The easement should just be right off of York Drive, and I think it was like 30 foot back off of York Drive.
The drainage easement's on the east side. York Drive would be on the west side of the parcel.
Oh, the drainage easement?
Yeah.
Yeah, our survey guy put it on the back. I don't really know if we'll need that. I mean, since it's Fall Creek waste.
Okay.
We're talking about stormwater more than we are sewage.
Oh.
We're curious about if you're ever get in a flooding situation and there needs to be tile put in and everybody needs to have an outlet. Where's your outlet?
I don't have that answer. I guess I'd have to look into it.
Because that pond is there because that area lays wet somewhat, and conovers do landscaping or something, and it's dry right now because of the lack of rain, but it typically isn't.
Typically full of water.
Yeah. I saw the easement, which was great. I like seeing them on there. An easement to nowhere unless you have access to get to the creek or on to the north. I don't know how helpful it is. I know that that was the owner of the parcel's mom's house or something, I believe, correct?
I think so, in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we actually talking about before this can go further, he needs to get some kind of easement to an outlet.
I mean, it bears to reason that we'd need to be able to try to get it to a swale or something, correct?
Doesn't make much sense if we don't.
So York Drive is the driveway on the left side of the parcel up
Yes,
there?
sir.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there's an easement on the
So this is
right-hand
York Drive, yeah,
side.
this would be, believe this would be the tree up there in the corner, kind of right in that
Easement to
area.
nowhere is what it is.
So there's an easement, but which, do you know, Jeff or Nathan, where the drainage goes there, or what's?
Well, Fall Creek's right to the north.
Okay.
I don't know how far back they have to go before they actually run into natural.
Sway.
It gets pretty steep back there, I know, but I don't know how far back.
I'm sure they can daylight it back there somewhere, but then it's going to run over somebody, so there has to be possibility needs to have an easement to the creek.
I know that field does lay wet there.
Where's the ravine there in the middle of the field, Nathan, over towards York Drive?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any idea if there's a tile in that?
I do not know. I could ask Laban. He may know. He's the one that I believe farms it for conovers.
Is the field kind of wet, or which is the wet part? Are you down in the right-hand corner, or?
Yeah, well, just that south kind of corner, I think, is the wettest.
Southeast corner.
Okay.
Always, yeah. It's always wet.
I was gonna say, is that like a little
How does
creek
that
through the
fall?
middle of that?
How does that fall on lot one then? Also,
To the
like,
west.
like how much of that
Oh, no.
lot one has that
More to the
pond in
west,
it?
more to the west. No, right there, somewhere in there. Is that a creek? No, on
You know of anything they can drop into on what you
see that
farm
right
there?
there, looks like.
I don't, not that I know of. I mean,
Yeah. And goes to the,
So you think there's an open creek there, possibly?
It looks as if there might be like a culvert or something here,
Uh-huh.
even the way that road's kind of raised.
looks like it almost might be cut.
And it
But that, I mean, they had the drainage
how it
easement.
meanders through, kind of splits,
Is
and
it-
it goes up and under here,
Mhm.
and then it goes under, crossing of some sort there, and then to Fall Creek.
So I mean, it kind of appears like almost the drainage easement would be better on but your driveways are gonna be on that York Drive, aren't they?
Yes, they would be.
I'm like you, Brian. I think the easement should be on the front, on the west side, but then I also feel like they need to follow up with where the water is going to go. Who's the property owner, and do we need easements to drop into something, or is it a natural water flow that they can consider using just because it's a natural water flow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's some questions here that's not answered.
Does Nathan or Matt, does the general topography higher elevations on the right side sloping to the
I think
west?
she's pulling up spot
I'm gonna
elevations.
try, we've had issues with maps for the last 5 or 6 years. They're moving stuff from one server to the other, and it's just been,
Well, I mean, it would appear that
It
that's the
appears
case.
that way.
the one thing I would say is see if there's a tile or something that goes through there or some way. And then we all know, like to hear this mutual drain, but put a 6-inch mutual drain in the front part for all of them, record it as a mutual drain, and then that way they have an outlet on their property.
Mr. Graham, how is that to be done when it comes to this for a mutual drain?
Or is recording it?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you had to, just a, really, very basic, just a recordation of legal drain, kind of like a deed. And
Put it in the deed that there is a mutual drain.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess, Matt, what we're really looking for is, like Nathan says, the drainage easement is a great forethought, but we're not sure if that's functional on that side or not, because the water may need to go to the west instead.
Okay.
So, and what we've run into, we had a similar plat like this, it was 4 or 5 lots, and so,
It was across the road. I think it's one
Oh,
of
really?
yours.
Yeah, for the carries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't want that, but after a little while, I saw an excavator come in and they started putting in
Yeah,
a
they put
tile because,
they put a perimeter one all the way around that house.
because he realized that it was wet.
Yeah,
and he needed the outlet.
yeah, there was a lot of pressure on
Because we
that.
said we didn't even care if it needed to be recorded.
Right.
Didn't even care if it was there, just for future development. And I was like, well, look, it's already needed. So this typically isn't just, we're trying to stave off problems in the future.
Right.
Yeah, so if one of these properties had a water issue, they would have an outlet, and then too, if it could be examined a little bit as to whether that could be daylighted into that open ditch, or conovers, if they're the owner, may or may not know about any tile that are on the property. So probably need a few more details.
Okay, I can do that.
Along that, and exploring whether that easement could be moved. I hate to, redo the survey work, but that would be our thoughts, is the possibility of an easement on the left side, or the west, is that the west side, I guess, and where that water might end up if there's an open
Okay.
ditch, and then, the neighbors would have to grant access unless it was in, like Jeff or someone said, it was a natural waterway already. So
Okay.
kind of the details there. Anything else, Nathan?
I think
that you've seen there?
that's really it. That
So I think it'll work out, but we kind of need to get a few of those details.
Okay.
Anybody have any other comments there?
Is adequate for the county?
Mm-hmm. No.
Oh, good. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, the next one is 101 Ag LLC, and I think talking to Jessica, they have submitted. We've talked about them some already, but they've kind of got their details worked out. They do have an easement across the two lots. Do you want to come up and share that, Jessica, please?
Good morning.
Morning.
You're correct. At the last meeting, if you recall, we talked about Ag 101 related to the stormwater management permit, and we had a couple of questions for them that we couldn't readily answer during the meeting. Since then, they have provided additional information. The first question that we had was, where does the existing detention pond go as far as the discharge? It does go to the south to the regulated drain on the, it's all within the parcel to the west. The current parcel, the current 80-some acre parcel. So we had a conversation with them about what that would look like in the future as they split off the two smaller parcels, and what the resolution there is, and what's kind of before you for review is they'll have on the, make sure I get this correct because there's two parts to it. On the proposed smaller parcel in the north, the plat will include a dedicated easement for the parcel to the small parcel to the east to maintain the drainage infrastructure, because they have it's two smaller parcels that have shared stormwater management facilities. Does that make sense? Okay. So those easements are included in the in the plat that is being reviewed by the planning department right now. And then the second part of it is what I'm calling the off-site easement, which is not currently off-site because it's all still one parcel, but once the plat goes through, it'll be off-site. And that is included in the packet that they sent to Angie yesterday. So from that, I believe that they have the items that we need to recommend, that I need to recommend approval to you, contingent on the plat being approved. And I think, and Angie can correct me on this, I think the plat is in front of you as well for review today.
That is Wednesday.
I think so. Is this the one that you're talking about up here? There's a drainage easement here, and then this down through here.
Yeah, there's a copy
Yes.
of both.
So
Yeah, so
that's,
this is, what they're doing here is saying, yes, this drainage easement will allow Lot 2 to maintain drainage infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure. So if for some reason Lot 1 and Lot 2 are sold to two different owners, the odds of that happening are very low because it is one facility on those two lots. But if that were to happen, Lot 2 would still maintain their right to use the stormwater pond and the discharge lines on Lot 1.
And then under the application form with your packet, there's a copy of the easement from the plat to the Levi Harbor Group.
Yeah, that's.
And that will be
So
recorded.
that's the quote unquote off-site part, once it becomes off-site, once the smaller parcel.
this is a continuation of this.
Correct.
Okay. And their initial pond was oversized too. Is that?
Yeah, when the, what I suspect it was, and we don't have records of this, but I suspect that when it was originally conceptualized, they envisioned the pond serving a big chunk of the two larger parcels. Now, how they thought they were going to get it there, I don't know, because the topography doesn't work, but it was very much oversized. So the existing pond has more than enough capacity for the stormwater management requirements for the two proposed smaller parcels, Lot 1 and Lot 2.
Okay.
And they exceed the release rates. I don't have it in front of me, but they are, they're doing better than what our requirements are.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions for Jessica on that? I think we've talked about this one about 3 times, and I think all the details are in order, it seems. Okay. Is there a motion for approval of plat 2023-P-014? I'll make a motion on that one. Is there a second?
A second.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. All right.
And then do you want to consider the stormwater management approval while we're talking about this one?
Yep, sure. Thank you. Okay.
Next thing on the
That's the next item, approval of 101 Ag Stormwater. So your recommendation there is that we're
Yes.
all in order as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the missing pieces were, from the last meeting, the missing pieces were where does that discharge line go? Because it wasn't clearly shown on the plans that we had. And then the second part is assuming that a portion of it would be off-site somewhere, that they needed a recorded easement. They can't record the easement until the plat all goes through, but I think if you are comfortable with the project, that we can give the approval contingent on that documentation following.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a motion for approval of the stormwater management plan for 101 Ag?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Okay.
Thank you. Do you want me to
Now,
just stay up here
sure.
for these?
You're on a roll.
Need a chair?
Right. No, we're not going to be here all day. So this next section, stormwater management project discussions, most of these came from our discussion at the last meeting where we had some complaints about work being done that the drainage on sites that had not been permitted by the drainage board. If you recall, the ordinance says very clearly that anything that disturbs greater than an acre of property in the county falls within the drainage board's jurisdiction, whether it's in the incorporated areas or not. And the disturbed area is defined as the parcel size. The first one that's on the list here is proposed Wolfie's site, which is in Pendleton's incorporated area. It's located in the northeast corner of I-69 and State Road 38 or State Street. Angie's got it pulled up on the map. We were aware of this project early on. The discussion that we had with the town of Pendleton was that it was a building only and they were doing very minimal site work. That is all I know about the project. When this complaint was brought to our attention and we talked about it at the last meeting, we discussed sending a letter to the property owner and asking them to come to the drainage board meeting today, and we did so, and I believe we have a representative from Fredericks here. Is that correct? But to be honest, that is all we know about this project. So if we could have him talk a little, I guess, if that would be the board's desire.
Okay. If you'd like to come on up, sir, and give your name and address and explain what's happening, please.
So my name is Nate Danley, address P.O. Box 229 Pendleton. We're the contractor for the owner. They're building tear down an existing building and rebuilding a restaurant there on site. Basically, they're wanting we've already ripped up all the existing asphalt and they want to pave a new parking lot in that area.
Do you have drainage plans that you can show us?
They're minimal. The owner had gotten submittal drawings from an architect, but they did not have a site engineer involved. with the project when it started.
That seemed to be a little backwards.
Yeah, a little bit. We were kind of, like Jessica had said, the owner had talked with the town, and they had initially considered it a remove and replace, but we've taken some of the dirt from the east side of the property and moved it over to the west side to change the grades a little bit so it balance out. But everything's still draining to the north off-site.
So when you say draining to the north off-site, how is that occurring?
Excuse me?
When you say everything is draining to the north off-site, how is that occurring?
It's just surface drainage.
So you're just running it over on the neighbor?
That's correct. It was the same as it was before we started.
I don't think that's acceptable.
So if I can jump back in. I think from what we pieced together is that this was not intended, but this is where we are now. The intent was to focus solely on the building or primarily on the building. And if that was the case, then it wouldn't necessarily raise the level of requiring a stormwater management permit from the county. However, given the condition of the site now, and Brandy has been out there, I know, because there were some concerns about the erosion control and so forth, I think it has since led to that. Obviously, you can take, and Jeff, jump in here, you can take a lot of different actions on this. Given the nature of the project, and the fact that the water does run off on, and then the stated intent is that it runs off onto the neighbor, that certainly violates the regulations. And my recommendation would be that we ask them to, or we tell them to pause work on the site work. I don't necessarily think we need to stop on the building itself. I think that can proceed. But I think they need to get an engineer engaged, and I think they need to go through our process as far as looking at the site, developing the stormwater management plan, the detention, stormwater quality, and so forth, and bringing that back to the board. That would be my recommendation in this situation. Again, I don't know that this necessarily raises the level of needing to stop work on the building, but I definitely think that the site needs to be looked at more closely by a professional engineer.
Do you have any idea, I mean, where the outlet is there? I mean, where does that go?
It surface drains into the field, but then the regulated drain is just to the north, isn't it, Angie?
Regulated drains up in a swale right up there, right there.
Mm-hmm.
The parking lot as it's proposed is right over the main gas lines that are buried there. Gas lines run parallel to the north, goes underneath the regulated drain and on north. I do not think that the town has any subsurface drainage on that side of 38 that they can work with at the moment. That may be something the town needs to really look at really seriously. But as far as it is right now, it's just they're going to asphalt, roof, the whole, it's going to be 100% runoff. And it's just going to run right out into the field.
Well, and particularly if they are, like he said, changing grade. If they're moving dirt from one side to the other, that changes the dynamics of the stormwater in the area.
In reality, it should be a curbed site with water retention and a release point and underground releasing of water. So, possibly a tile all the way to the legal drain, or the town needs to do something.
The site is small enough that they might be able to just do it through infiltration. I mean, it's not a large parcel. I think there's options there, but I definitely think that it's something that needs to be looked at to protect the neighbors.
Sounds like it. Any other questions or comments there that the board has?
No.
Is this, how far along is the construction itself? What stage? Are you in framing or beyond or? what?
Yeah, the building's probably, we're coming up on finishing rough in, so but it's dried in, probably 50%.
Okay. The board have any specific recommendations? I think Jessica's recommending an engineer, stormwater management plan, some details on that.
Drainage calculation.
Is everybody okay with continued construction, subject to this plan?
I wouldn't want them to do any parking lot,
Just the building.
just the building.
The work in the building and with the building exterior is not going to change what they're doing at the site. So
Sure.
I would feel comfortable with moving forward on that. If this, God forbid, goes south and you need to put a total stop work order, then you have that option down the road, right, Chuck? But I don't think that's needed at this time. So,
I didn't want to put them at risk to continue building if there was.
I mean, I'm going to be honest here. Many of us would really like Libby's to open.
Well, yeah, nobody's trying to stop this.
No.
It's just it's a factor that we have, a standard that we have that needs to be kept in place, and we do not accept running water off of a development onto another property owner. We never have.
I'm tired of the cart getting put in front of the horse every time. Every time we do this. It seems.
Should we have a motion on this
Yes.
matter, Jeff? Okay.
You want a deadline on this?
Probably.
Request
should.
return.
I would say an update at the next drainage board meeting and a plan within 60 days.
Okay. Okay.
Or update at each of the next drainage board meetings, or at least
Okay.
four, if that makes sense. I keep
Okay.
forgetting we don't meet monthly, so.
Okay. Okay. Is there a motion to that effect, or? I'll make a motion that we, the Wolfies, project is subject to, retaining an engineer, developing a stormwater management plan, beginning, reporting back to the board on progress in 2 weeks, and then as Jessica says, 60 days, for completion and a final plan there. And, we won't request stop work on the building, but we do kind of need to move progressively on the plan, so that's my motion. Is there a second?
I'd only like you to amend that there is a stop work on anything outside of the building.
Yeah.
Okay. There's an amendment. Is there an amendment for John's, or a second for John's
I'll second
amendment? Okay, any other questions on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Okay, so we've got the original motion with the amendment. Are we ready for the question?
Yes.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Okay. Stormwater management. Thanks, sir. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jessica. ATM.
Yeah, the next one on the list is ATM. This one is located down near the Fisher's Trucking site that we discussed the last few meetings, near just north of Summer Lake. We had some, and I believe we have an engineer from that firm, from this project here to discuss things with us. We had some discussions with about this project early last year when it was first brought up, and we did have discussions about how the town of Ingalls standards were different than the county standards, and that the county did have jurisdiction on it. And then, to be honest, we didn't hear anything about it until it was brought up again with Fisher's Trucking, and then kind of in a roundabout way, the engineer reached out to us and said, hey, what do we need to do? And so that's why we're here today. We did receive some plans and plans and drainage report on this project. It doesn't meet the county standards because it was designed to Ingalls standards. It was reviewed by Ingalls engineer, did not come before us, as I said. The big concerns that I have, and I'm hopeful that we can have some additional information provided today, is that one, it doesn't meet the discharge standards. To be honest, it's low, so it's not a huge impact, but it definitely doesn't meet the standards. The second is that from what I can see on the plans, the detention facility is a dry detention basin that is located in the floodplain. It's very clear in our standards and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse on this discussion, but it's very clear in our standards that detention in the floodplain is not permitted. And this is exactly what we told Fisher's Trucking, and that was why we denied the waiver request that they had. Do not see any additional provisions related to the dry detention basin that show that it is a protected, what I call a protected detention facility in the floodplain. And what I mean by that is when you look at Ingalls Crossing, the other one that is proposing work in the floodplain on the north side of the interstate there, they have done additional modeling. They've put on backflow prevention. They've oversized the detention facilities so that the detention facility can still work the way it's intended when the regulated drain is in flood conditions. I don't see any evidence of that on this project. Also, when I went out there, just to do a quick drive-by, put eyes on the site, there's a lot of bare dirt. There is a lot of area that has not been seeded, and there's not erosion control measures in place. I don't believe it's still an active construction site, but I don't know because some parts of it look like it's an active construction site. There's also what appears to be a drainage ditch on the east side of the building. I don't know if it's on the same, I don't know where the property line exactly is, but it's a bare dirt ditch. There's no seeding, no erosion control blankets, and so forth. So, no, the ATM building is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I was looking at the trucking building. Sorry.
It's kind of how that field is. Actually, the line is like kind of like this.
So we reached out to the engineer and asked him to come talk to us about the project, what's going on, and what we can do to work towards bringing this into compliance, or the board can certainly grant waivers for regulations, but that is your purview. So
Is everything, the line that Angie just showed us, is everything to the west of that ATM? Is that?
I would ask Don to come up and talk about that because that is what I'm not clear on, to be honest. This is within the PUD that was referenced during the Fisher's Trucking project, and
Okay.
so yeah.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Don Humphrey with a company called Total Engineering Solutions. We were the site design engineers for this project, and I do apologize for all the confusion and to the point that we're even here. Yeah, to answer a couple quick questions, that ditch that you're looking at is off our property, and it was bare to start with. It's basically, this whole thing was a farm field, so I don't think it's ever been vegetated, but it is not on our property. So yeah, so I don't know. I mean, whatever needs to be done there, we're more than willing to help, but we don't have the authority to do that, I guess. With regards to our site, obviously, we're here to work through whatever issues. And just to follow up with what Jessica said, initially, when we went through the town of Ingalls for permitting, they made a comment in their review that since we went across, the county liquid drain in the Thorpe ditch, that at that time, they told us we needed an outlet permit. So I reached out to the county, I reached out to Angie. We had sent the plans and drainage report back in January of last year and was kind of asking what kind of permits do we need. Jessica and I had a phone call a few weeks after that, and I've told her I apologize. I don't remember the whole crux of the conversation. So we are aware that we needed permitting. We had tried to start that process, and it just, the honest answer is just kind of got dropped, I think, on, at least on our end, to somewhat on your all's end. We'd asked for what permits were needed. We were never really told, but we were aware of something. So the fact that the project is built is, it is an issue and that we need to deal with. But with regard to the pond, there is a flap gate on the outfall structure. I don't know about the sizing, so that's stuff, Jessica, you and I can work through as far as calculations or what we need to do. But I guess at this point, we're here to say we're willing to cooperate on whatever we need to do, realizing that this is kind of backwards and wasn't followed through very well on the front end. It wasn't ignored, but it wasn't done, obviously. So that's where we're at. We can answer any questions as we go forward, either today or through her directly. Obviously, if changes are need to be made, we will do what we can to correct anything needs to be corrected. But we're here to basically say we understand, we dropped the ball, and we're here to make things right. So you tell us what we need to do as we go forward.
Okay. Could you clarify again, Angie, is the parcel that you delineated there, is that, that's not Fisher's Trucking or?
This is the Fisher's Trucking.
Right.
I don't want to move it again because they'll
Okay,
take
yeah.
it over.
Yeah, no, she's
This is the DC Concrete, Dustin Calhoun, who was the
Okay.
gentleman up here
Uh-huh.
barking.
Uh-huh.
No offense, Dustin. This is the ATM site.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about 3.4 acres, I think, and she's drawn it out pretty accurately. That's basically, is our site.
So Don, are you saying that ditch is on the Fisher's Trucking site? You know which ditch I'm talking about?
Yes, the one on the east side, yes, it is.
Interesting.
Yeah, our property line literally is like the top of bank, a few feet west of the top of bank, but it is on their property, the way it was laid out. So we had to grade to the top of bank, but the rest of the ditch actually is not on our property, the way the lot was subdivided out. The back slope of our pond is on our property by a few feet, and then that ditch line that runs out to so no, that is not on our property. As far as the seeding of the site, that's understandable, and I would have expected it to be done also. They didn't necessarily disturb it, but it was never seeded, so it was always a farm field, so we need to get that done. That's stuff that we can have corrected fairly quickly. The pond itself, obviously, you are correct, it is in the floodplain.
Is it within the drain easement?
No, there's nothing in the floodway, there's nothing in the drainage easement other than the outlet pipe, but part of the parking lot and the pond is within the floodway, or the flood fringe. So, the project does have stormwater quality, it does have stormwater quantity. I think, and Jessica, what you and I need to talk about is, and Ingalls had brought up the same question, as you know, when you do the 0.3 CFS per acre, it's hard. We have a 4-inch orifice in our outlet structure, which is as small as anybody likes to go, but we have not met and that's clearly stated in the drainage report, that we have reduced drainage from the existing 100-year is more than the post 100-year, but obviously the post 100-year isn't all the way down to your 0.5 CFS per acre, because it's just such a small number. To do that would have required a really, really small. And we run into this in Hamilton County too. It's the same. They have the same standards, and it's like when you have smaller sites like this, it's just hard to, a pipe under pressure, just hard to keep it down to. I think we're only allowed like 1.5 CFS or something on the entire site, and it's just. But again, we'll whatever we got to do, we'll work with you to do. But that's the way it was designed, was to get as small as we possibly could, and you say, here it is. It's better than existing conditions, but not as good as your allowable standards.
But you can get it to the allowable standards.
We would have to reduce the orifice down to nothing, yes. And
Well, I mean, most people get it done, so I'm asking.
Well, but there's also a rule of thought that if you put in a 2-inch orifice, it's going to plug all the time, and that's not practical either. I don't know, Jessica, or the counties that, other communities have the same. They say it's got to be this, but also it can't be less than a 6-inch orifice. Well, I can't do both. In this case, we went all the way to a 4-inch orifice. So it is possible, and if you allow a 2-inch orifice, that's what we would have done. But when we are dealing with Ingalls, they said 6 inches is the smallest. We said, can we do a 4? That helps, and they said fine, and that's how we left it. So that's more of a question on what their policy is.
We would not want a 2-inch orifice, but the orifice isn't the only way to control that, John. There's other different ways. What I would recommend in this case is that we work with Burke. Burke's already working with us on the Ingalls Crossing. In that review, they have a lot of expertise in how to do things in the floodplain to minimize impact. We can get them involved in this one as well and ask them to help us look at maybe what should have been considered and what could be done to bring this to where we all want it to be.
Just curious for my own information in terms of what, and I've been past that, but I haven't paid that much attention. How much building and parking lot is comprised of the site? I mean, what does this look like?
About half the site, because a lot of that back is your 70-foot drainage easement in the floodway. It's probably maybe 60% of the site's developed. It's a small, like 12,000 square foot building with some parking in the back.
This is the easement for regulated drain. This is the floodplain.
Okay.
And then this is their building and parking lot drainage.
Okay.
So again, there's no construction within the easement or within the floodway, but the floodplain comes in about half the property.
Don, what kind of business is this?
So ATM Advisory is just what it sounds like. ATM, they basically, well, it's a multiple tenant building, but the main tenant, ATM Advisory, is, they basically do maintenance on ATM machines. So there's
Offices.
yeah, it's mainly offices. I mean, it's not warehousing, there's no manufacturing, it's literally just, it's set up to be 3 different tenants, for small, like, flex space office, small warehousing. But they are strictly, they're an ATM. Currently, they have an office in Fishers, and they, for some reason, wanted to move, so.
So Jessica, for clarification, what are we missing at this point that we should have had?
Well, if we had reviewed this ahead of time, we would have, my recommendation would have been no to the detention of floodplain. My recommendation would have been that we need to rethink the drainage approach, the stormwater management approach, to get it to where we do meet the discharge rates. And then those would be the 2 big things, I think. There's a couple other little things, but those are the 2 major things that I'm concerned about.
So since it never came before us, I mean, are we just gonna, I guess my question is,
I would suggest that we have,
let's start over and
let's have Burke review it and see what they suggest in this situation. As far as, are there things that can be done to help bring it to where we have a higher level of comfort that will still function properly during the flooding events, that will still meet the intent of our drainage ordinance? That would be my recommendation. I don't know the answer to that. That's a little bit more technically savvy than I am.
I mean, one big conflict is moving the dry retention is a big
obviously
problem.
that would have been my recommendation had we been able to comment on this prior to it being constructed. Again, my goal is not to shut down businesses. It's not to cause that, but we have the obligation to protect the integrity of the
Yeah, you can't ignore it.
Right. Particularly given that others are using you as an example of what we've approved in the past when we clearly did not approve it.
Well, and to be honest, we are using the DC next to us as an example because part of their pond is in floodplain. So
Honestly, I think that whole
We weren't-
is a problem.
we weren't aware that that was a big issue until now. So.
I don't even think he even talked to Ingalls about that, but anyway.
Okay, so where we're at is you're going to recommend,
If that is
if
the
it's,
board's-
if it's agreeable with the board, to speak with Burke, let them do a little analysis of it, or give us any suggestions they might have, or retroactive activity that we could pursue. And then we'll get back in touch with ATM and see where we're at.
Yeah, and we're, like I said, we're at this point, we understand if there's modification need to be made, we'll work with you to get that done. I mean, it was never intended to hide the project, it was just literally submitted and then dropped, and that was on us, so.
Okay, do we need a motion on this one too, Jeff?
We do.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we, Jessica contacts Burke and we look at the details of the ATM site, how that could fit in with our stormwater management regulations and technical data, and then we'll get back in touch with ATM and see what the possible resolution is.
Second.
We probably won't have that for the next meeting. It'll probably be my next
Okay.
decision.
Sure.
Second.
We got a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those who oppose the same. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Humphries.
Thanks, Don.
Okay.
The next item in the Let's Make Jessica the Bad Guy section of the agenda is the Anderson C store. And Angie probably can speak a little better to this one. We were approached about a development at 38th and Rangeline.
Take that off the agenda, so I did.
I'm looking, but I thought we were going to talk to them about the discharge. Because we're not ready to review the stormwater side of it, the stormwater management plan. Did you not want to talk to them about the discharge?
Yeah, that's fine.
This is located by Bobcat, by the Coca-Cola facility. The question is that they are proposing a development that discharges into the regulated drain in that area. And Angie, which one is that? Can you remember?
The Ollie Pittsford.
Thank you, the Ollie Pittsford. And there's concern about whether the Ollie Pittsford has capacity for a new discharge to it.
They're putting a gas station here and a convenience store. The plans that, I think the guy's name is Nick, was talking about coming over, from what I looked at, I don't know if it was going down and then over, but they were talking about tying into the Pittsford over here. And I had stated that in an email that I wasn't, before the city told him to contact us because of the Pittsford, and he wanted to know if they could outlet whatever, and I said, I don't know if that even drain has the capacity, but send us your plans, so on and so forth.
So I don't know if we need action on this now. It's just something we're going to need to deal with. We have not been able to review the plans. We haven't had the chance to review them.
I know we've put a pretty aggressive plan in front of the city to upgrade the Pittsford. I haven't seen a lot of dirt flying. I would be leaning very heavily on the fact that we wouldn't allow any more hookups to that drain until we see all these improvements done.
So we've been talking to the city, Matt House, the city engineer, and I went to the Board of Public Works the other day, and they won't do anything without Matt House. So we're just going back and forth here on the Pittsburgh. You know, I think Jeff Healy has plans. It's going to be $1.5 million to do the Pittsburgh. And most of us do the old General Motors plans, but it's not going to. It won't handle any more water, I believe.
At that location, it's going to be difficult to get anything working better than it is. Don't you guys agree? Without a enlargement of a tile.
So I think one option that you have, and we may need to look into this a little bit more about logistically how it works, but I know that when you have regulated drains that are lacking in capacity, you can choose to apply a more restrictive discharge rate. That might be something to consider here. So I don't know what that looks like. I just know it's an option that the board does have.
So when you say that, does that mean on a certain size development, when we slow down the discharge rate, that automatically enlarges their pond and
maybe it changes it into more of an infiltration basin type of system as opposed to a pond with an actual outflow. Maybe there's just more of an emergency overflow instead of, and the goal is for the stormwater to stay in place and infiltrate into the site instead of being discharged into the regulated drain. There's dozens of different ways to do stormwater management.
Wouldn't that just build a swamp?
It could, but it could build the swamp in a very defined specific area. And I don't think the technical term is swamp. I believe it's a bioretention area.
Well, you know.
Or a rain garden.
I put on work boots every day, so it can be a swamp.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I'm in agreement with Jeff. I hate to add additional water and, behind Bobcat and clear out through there and behind that. And that's what we started the Pittsford engineering review for, was because of all those problems. I think it is challenging to think about trying to add more water anywhere there. And, I value your opinion greatly, but I also value Jeff's swamp idea.
Oh, no, I don't disagree. I'm just throwing ideas out.
To me, this is one of those, we've got some ARPA funding out there I'd love to spend on some drainage projects. This is one of those that, you could partner with the city. Hey, if you pony up, this much to fix, we could come back and maybe utilize some of those funds to do the whole thing. I can't see us paying for all of it.
Well, It sounds like we really need to have a concrete.
Time's gonna run out. We need to get on with it.
We need an urgent and concrete discussion with the city, really. I mean, because it does affect economic development in that area, and it is a busy area. Somebody's bought the Cove plant and put a new business, back in there. It looks like so. I mean, that sounds like, these surveyors and drainage boards need to get together and kind of get the ball rolling in reality out there.
We can reach out to Matt again and have that discussion, especially now that there's development that is being proposed along the drain.
What? And John, from your perspective on that money, ARP money, or what's your time frame, or what would you?
It's all got to be spent by the end of 26.
Okay.
So what's happening on that? If you recall, we have Burke doing that stormwater master plan, and they're looking at. They were up here last week doing some field work to investigate the drains. The goal there is for them to be able to pull out some projects to propose to the ARPA committee for consideration. Ones that would have maybe multiple benefits. This would be a good example because there is the economic development component, there's the collaborative component with the city, and so on. There's a couple others that will probably raise out of that. They're working through that now. I'm not sure when exactly that part of the agreement is supposed to be, or the part of the plan is supposed to be ready for us. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we can reach out to them and find out where we are on that. But I think the goal, just generally from the ARPA side, was beginning of the next calendar year is when we would have those discussions. And now that probably won't coincide with what the proposed gas station would like to see.
Sure.
Now, if you wanted to have, just while we're on that subject, a big undertaking, once again, if we did some type of assessment on all the major, just like Pipe Creek, Killbug, Fall Creek, all those, then part of that could be initial funding from ARPA to get started to the tune, of $1 million or a couple $1 million, and then, assess everybody to keep that work going moving forward. So you could really make a huge dent, by some type of, $1 an acre or whatever it is to be, and perpetually keep that thing going. But that's a massive undertaking. But that funding source is there.
Yeah.
And with the right plan and the right action, you could make a huge impact.
So what would we need to do? Would that have to be a public meeting and
Massive public hearing?
Well, and again, remember that's that's part of what Burke's looking at for us too.
Yeah.
Is to come up with some of those options. So.
I resigned immediately 2 minutes ago. Because we sure would not want to miss out on using that money, and what a great seed for the future. Would that be in conjunction with the city with project with Pittsburgh on that, or would it just be?
No, that would be a totally separate
Okay.
issue.
So you're thinking
But you could do one or both, possibly depending on things that are submitted.
Okay.
But the idea with all those waterways, more directly affects everybody in the county.
Sure, it'd be cover broadband. Yeah. No, I think it's a long-range thought that really we need to look at.
Which is why we're working
how
on
long
this.
range? Because I heard this back on this board back in 1992. So how long range?
What's
are
the
we
average
gonna make?
lifespan of a white male?
We spent a lot of
81?
time talking about it, 7 or 8
We
years
have,
ago.
yeah,
But,
we have.
but here we are. You could potentially get a huge
Yeah.
grab on some money to get started.
But, and I think, as you say, Jeff, we've got this chance for this big chunk of money to put the foundation under it for a long time, but maybe we'll get a plaque with our name on it or something to get that done, right?
Put it on the bridge.
On the bridge. So, but yeah.
More likely a bulletproof vest.
But you look at the because it is long range. I don't know, but I'm willing to tackle it if the board's willing to tackle it. On Pittsburgh, if you think that's a possibility too, I think we need to get together with the city and try and, because whoever this business owner is, they have a plan and a dream, but we're not too optimistic about that because we know what the drainage conflict is there.
The argument they will make and I don't like this argument, but I'm just making it because I know they will make it, is that the proposed runoff, if they meet the city, or the county stormwater management standards, that will have, in theory, less of an impact on the regulated drain because it does have the detention. So while the condition of the drain itself, the capacity of the drain itself is certainly a concern, you could make the argument that allowing this development to proceed would not negatively, in theory, impact the drain, and maybe shouldn't be held up. So,
And that's why we set the restrictions as hard as we
absolutely.
did.
So that is something to
You
consider.
should be able to argue that it's an improvement.
I guess what Angie and I need, though, is an idea from you as to whether that is the approach that you'd like to take with this, and allow this to move forward through the design review, or if you want to say no more to development on.
If we're gonna get on with fixing the thing up, then it's not gonna be 2 or 3 years from now, gonna be an issue at all.
But this person's wanting to develop within the next 6 months, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
we have the plans now to review. So
Yeah.
that's where we
But
could use some
there's not gonna be
guidance.
more water running off this property after they develop it than there currently is.
Assuming that I haven't looked at their design, but assuming their design meets the standards, you are correct.
Okay.
So you want Jessica and my office get together with Matt House, their engineering office, and see what we can work out? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, if you want a drainage board member or two to meet with you as well, I think that's, kind of that's fine.
And then if you are gonna go after some of these funds, I think you're gonna do something like that and go for the other, or do you just want, one huge amount to try and do that one big project and figure the rest out a different way?
The city of Anderson's got the same funds. I mean.
No, they do.
They got funds.
They're doing a
And-
very different approach, though, to how they're.
Okay, so, you need direction on this project right now.
I guess the direction that we're requesting is, do you want us to move forward with this review, or do you want us to put this on hold indefinitely? And then concurrently, we can meet with the city and come up with some ideas for what can be proposed to the ARPA committee.
If I'm hearing what John said correctly, I mean, he's kind of saying that if they develop a plan and it meets our standards, then technically it would
It's
be
improving the
satisfactory.
It'd be a plus instead of a minus.
It would. The difference is right now there's not a direct connection into the regulated drain. The proposed plan would have a direct connection, but theoretically, the water reaching the regulated drain would be less with the detention.
Now, if I'm looking at this correctly, they're not going to actually own the property all the way to the outlet. They're gonna have to
They'll need an
obtain
easement.
an easement.
They'll have to get an easement.
They understand that?
Well, we haven't had any of those conversations with them, but
Okay.
yes, that would be the case.
Okay.
And that would be what we would tell them.
Okay, to move it along, I'll make a motion that we suggest that they continue with the review. Did you have a question, Rob, before I make a motion?
Just about this, because, no, you're good, I'm just gonna go up here, just something that I hope you guys remember, because Angie, they're going here, right?
Yes.
Because didn't they say there's a tie-in back over here?
Somewhere, yeah, I think like this.
I don't know if that's still even there, because this all got rerouted down this way, and there's the structure here. I mean, for them to even go to right there, that thing carries so much water, I mean, I don't know if, how much more water it would take. It's just,
Yeah, but the point being, it should be less water.
okay, well, I'm just saying,
But-
there's nothing connected into there yet, and just the amount of water that comes through there from the north and northeast is just a lot, it's a lot.
I agree.
So,
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. And so they're gonna have to go along, they may have to go along the street in reality to get
yeah,
an
I mean,
access.
I went back there to the woods before on the south side of the apartments to see if I could see where that's located, and you just can't. But that was just so you know that structure there at the road where I would think they would need to tie into,
Okay,
that it drains a lot
Lot of-
now.
sure,
And for that, to add another structure in there, unless something should be done,
sure.
So just to let you know.
No, thank you, Rob. Okay, I'll make a motion that, we continue with the review, but it's subject to, some conditions, as they develop their plan, there may be more retention required, et cetera. We definitely want to meet the county rates, et cetera, and our technical data, they may need to realize that the connection may need to come across the street, along the street right away or something there. But I guess that's my motion unless someone has additional items that they would
Should be fine.
want to add to that.
I don't even know if it needed a formal motion. We just wanted guidance as to whether you wanted us to move forward with it or not.
Okay, does anybody want to argue with me?
No.
Besides Rob?
I'll second the motion that we move forward.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All who oppose the same. Okay.
Are you talking on Drew's parts? Okay, Drew's parts. No, it's all right. I'm fine. I'm just giving you a hard time. I don't mind doing it. So that's what they pay me for, Jeff. Okay, so update on Drew's parts. As you know, about a year ago, we were going through the process of working with them, working with the planning department to really push forward on getting the stormwater management construction complete, the ground seeded and stabilized, and moving towards closing out the permits. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind is there's two different permits that related to stormwater on this that are county focused, and then there's one that's focused on IDEM. The first is the stormwater management permit, and that's the construction of the pond and the detention facilities and the discharge piping. The second then is the general stormwater construction permit, used to be called Rule 13, Rule 5, sorry, Rule 5, thank you. And now it's called the general stormwater construction permit. That is basically saying that there is construction activities occurring at the site. So I want to talk about the construction of the stormwater management system first. That permit we closed out Banning did the review of that. Banning signed off on the plan for that. That was closed out in July of last year. And then we had some storm events that showed that there was water that was being bypassed around the pond. And over the last year, we've been working with them and with Drew's Parts and their engineer to fix that. Okay. From our ordinance, water on site has to go into the detention facility, into the pond, unless you grant a waiver. There was no waiver granted in this case. Water off site has to be accommodated. That means it either has to go into the pond and it can be treated as pass through in the pond, or it has to not be made worse. Okay, so in the case, what you're seeing is that there's a ton of offsite water in this area that goes through the Drew's Parts facility, and it's more prominent now that the woods are gone. What we have talked with Drew's Parts and their engineer and IDEM about is, and Banning, is they've added some additional bank stabilization to ditches. They've better defined ditches. They have better included grading that redirects the on-site flow into the pond and the off-site flow into stabilized channels so that it goes without just causing significant erosion and destroying. We've made a huge amount of progress on that. From the site visit, it appeared that those items had been addressed. We had asked for the engineer to update drawings. We've gone back and forth with them a number of times on that. I received an updated set of plans that I have not opened yet at about 10:40 last night, so I haven't looked at them. But we're close on that part of it, and that's solely the stormwater management side of it. But there is still an outstanding issue as far as whether the plans line up with what was provided. We just haven't gotten to look at the stuff that was submitted yesterday. On the erosion control side, the general construction permit side, the big provision in there, going back a year, they had seeded the site for the infrastructure. I don't need to tell the farmers here what last summer was like as far as weather. So the grass didn't grow. What then occurred was erosion, destabilization of the banks, and problems. And so we've been working with Mr. Drews, IDEM has been working with Mr. Drews, Brandy's been working with Mr. Drews about getting that resolved. Per the code, I believe it's the state code and the county code, 70% of the site has to be stabilized with established vegetation in order to close out the general construction permit. And that's not just the pond, that is the entire site. So that includes all of the landscaping area that was done to meet the planning department's requirements last year. Their soil stockpile areas, the whole facility. Since we restarted the discussions with Mr. Drews about that, they have made significant progress in that area as far as regrading, seeding, stabilizing, but vegetation has not yet been established, and that's the key. So that's where we are right now, and I would ask Brandy to come up here and add anything that I've missed. But the situation we have now is that we think we need to formalize this, or at least ask you to consider formalizing this and establishing a date for when they need to have vegetation established. I realize that a lot of it is weather controlled, but at the same time, what we saw last year was when we didn't pursue that more aggressively, that we very much backtracked and ended up with erosion problems and bank stabilization problems. And so that's where we're at now. I'm sure Mr. Drews would like to talk and add more to it, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have related to this.
Anybody have any questions for Jessica right now?
Well, if we're going into this time of the year with the forecast that we all farmers know, the likelihood of him spreading grass and getting a good cover right now is not very good.
He's going to have to water.
So he's got to look at other options, hydroseeding, sodding in certain spots, something.
Would you like him to tell you what he's been doing?
Yeah.
That might be helpful.
Kelly Drews, 705 East School Street. So, morning. I sent Angie some pictures today where a couple weeks ago, Jessica and Brandy came out and said, so the pond's not holding water. We hit sand somewhere. And the quickest resolution for us is pretty much, so we don't have to do more dig and wait for it to go down, is to use bentonite because what the plan is, we put all the mats and stuff around there. And when Jessica and them came out, she's like, what's a realistic time frame? And I called one of the Joe and Jeff Doty. They do a lot of county work in that. And I was like, when can you get out here to look at? And they said, it's gonna be at least a week. I'm like, well, I'm fed up with this. So we took the excavator, we graded everything out. We've seeded it, we've strawed it, fertilized it, and the rain's gonna help here that just hit. And where there's not matting is pretty much where there used to be grass there, but it's where we're driving on it to prepare everything. And the plan is, if we don't keep the rain going, is we're gonna pump the water out of the pond and to irrigate that to get all that to start growing.
Now, what about all that grass that you've killed? Where you're
We're gonna have to
put mats down.
We got plenty of mats, and when we run out, we're very well known out of Meriturf out there in Chesterfield.
Did you say you might put bentonite clay in the bottom of that?
Cut.
So I know there's been a lot of discussion about whether or not the pond holds water. From a stormwater perspective, the goal of a stormwater management pond is to keep the water from running off. We don't care if it infiltrates into the ground. And actually, that's not a bad thing necessarily. I don't want to necessarily speak for Mr. Drews, but I believe he would like this pond to better hold water, to be able to be more aesthetically pleasing, more recreational use, and so forth. That's totally independent of the stormwater management approach. So from our perspective, it doesn't matter if it infiltrates into the ground. That's not why this is not complete. That's not, however, if work is going to occur in there, I know there's been talk about draining the pond and capping and so forth, then that keeps this as an active construction site. You cannot close out, we can't close out the construction permit if that is occurring. And if we close out the construction permit and that occurs in the future, then that's a new construction permit. Does that
Sure.
make sense? So there's, That's a separate issue. That's why I didn't bring it up, to be honest, because it really isn't a stormwater management issue.
No, that's fine. I didn't know if that was a requirement or necessary. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's when she gave us the two options, like, she didn't care if it went in the ground, obviously it looked nicer and better for everyone if it fills up, but that's why it's okay. Because we've got you can see, we got the stockpile from the pond in the back, which we've already seeded and strawed and that, and now this rain should help too. But we were gonna take parts of that, take the excavator, cut it out, fill it full of clay, but with the way things are going, it's like, let's just take it to where it drained. We know where it stops draining, so then if we have to water all around there to get the grass to grow, then we'll know where we can put the bentonite. I've already talked to Busby Well Drilling about the bentonite and all that stuff, so we know where to get it, we know what it costs, and it's just, that's gonna speed that process up. And that's what I talked to her about, saying a year from now, it doesn't take and it doesn't fill up, well, then we can come back and open up another permit to try and fix it if we need to.
Well, one question, just as a practical thought, is that what happens as it drains down? Is it required to have grass on all the bank area, the walls of the pond?
It needs to be stabilized. So it doesn't necessarily need to be grassed, but it needs to be stabilized. You mean as far as closing out the construction permit?
Well, yeah, as the water level drops, it's going to expose more bank.
That is true. We'll need to stabilize that bank as it does.
And that's why, well, where you see where all the straw is on there, that's at some points gonna be underwater. Because, I mean, we had it last year, we had it seed and strawed and stabilized up to where the safety ledge is there, where there's no grass. We had all that up to, because the water's supposed to come to that safety ledge. Well, we had that huge rain last year, and it filled the pond halfway up. I mean, it did nothing released, but it filled it halfway up. So then, when it started going down, that's where you got the rifts and all the destabilization. And then when they came out a few weeks ago, that's when she's like, I don't care if it's not underwater, it's not underwater. Mm-hmm. So that's when we took the excavator, we cleaned everything up around there, where it was getting the rifts, where it was not stabilized, and that's where we put the mats at. So where the mats are now, at some point, it's supposed to be underwater. So, but that's why we've done that, to get the grass growing, and then once the pond's fixed, then that'll just be underwater and be a mute point.
But you are correct, Brian. We can't close out the construction permit if 70% of the site, including that visible part, is not stabilized with established vegetation.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
And Angie has some other pictures about where we put the riprap. I went down on the street right there, right in that area. That's looking from Flintwood west towards our property where the outlet would be. And since spring, you can see where the neighbors discarded all their leaves and stuff in the ditch. And if there was any amount of water coming through there, it's going to wash those out. And there's been like zero water coming in there since we did that last year. Now, granted, when we had to fix it, there was a couple areas that the water routed itself around, and we've alleviated those.
Is that a surface swell? Is that a grass waterway then coming down there, right there? Or is that a tile, or is that a grass? Look like a grass swell.
Is that from your site?
Yeah, that's going to that's at the corner of down there at McCarthy.
Down the hill.
Yeah,
so
down
at
there.
one time that was riprap. The county actually went out and put a pretty significant amount of riprap on there. When the site was cleared and water was running off undetained, it washed all the riprap down the hill and out. And that is the portion that, if you recall back when we originally were discussing this project, that Mr. Drews agreed that he would need to reestablish once everything else is closed out.
Okay, so you made a couple suggestions earlier, I think, there about timeframes, and and Jeff commented on that too. I mean, he's going to have to water the grass, so to speak.
That's where we're at.
If there's no water at all coming through that now, do we need to? And we could work with the neighborhood there, but it may not be necessary to put riprap back in there. We could just backfill it and seed it.
I think what we need to be careful about is that the water from the Kelly Drew site may not be coming through there, but there is a significant amount of
That's
offset
correct.
water. This is at the end of a watershed. It's a pretty large watershed. And a portion of, like the southern part, not southern, but the downstream side of this is all in the floodplain and floodway from Kilbuck Creek. So there's a lot of water moving through this area. We had met with Jeff Orr out there.
It's into Norton's Pond, isn't
Someone does.
We had met with Jeff to come up with a plan.
Put it all in the pond, you wouldn't have any flooding.
And his thought was that they could stair step it a little
Oh,
bit to slow
okay.
water.
Okay.
He's got
Yeah.
a pretty good.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
He was worst case scenario saying to rip it all for his cost estimate, but that can be adjusted.
Okay.
But there's significant erosion.
I could see where when you had substantial, we've had a dry spring too, you know, which would, you know, the leaves probably haven't hardly got washed out because we just haven't had much significant rain. So we need to establish a timeline for the development of the grass.
What we're asking the board to consider is to issue notice of violation, issue notice of violation letter with an established date for closing out the general construction permit and for closing the loop on the stormwater management permit requirements. And then if that doesn't occur, then consideration for moving forward with some sort of enforcement action.
Okay, so we would need to send a notice of violation to Drew's Parts, giving him a time frame of when we expect this to be completed. Beyond that point, then he might incur fines or.
And I think we also need to include in there what that specifically means as far as closing it out. So the establishment of the vegetation on 70%, the receipt of the accurate drawings that we've requested multiple times that we still don't, that we may or may not have. I don't know what we got last night. Were there other, that was the two big things, right?
Yeah, just making sure all the erosion controls were noted. If there's silt anywhere, if there's any of that needs to be removed and it needs to be established.
Okay. So, that letter would be drafted by you, Jeff.
Yeah, in concert with Jessica, it would be done. You could give discretion on the timeline to either the attorney or.
To what?
Discretion on the timeline to either the engineer or the attorney.
Oh, okay.
On that, you could just direct
Okay.
us to do it.
Okay.
And, rather than, well, we need this date, we need to come back to this board again.
Mm-hmm.
You could delegate that to Jessica and myself.
Okay. Okay, so this should be in the form of a motion.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion to the effect of sending a letter of violation?
Notice of violation.
Containing specifics that Jessica mentioned, 70% completion, meeting all those standards, the silt fence, the barriers, etc. And the timeline, would you prefer that we give you a specific number on that in this motion? Or
I think we're happy to discuss that. The timeline Brandon and I discussed that seemed reasonable to us was August 31st. But that's totally to your discretion.
Okay.
But it's all the criteria to remove the construction permit. It's what it needs to meet, right?
Correct.
Okay. And we'll leave that to the discretion of you and Jeff on the timeline then, if you guys have discussed that with
That's
Brandy, et cetera. So I guess that, I'll put that in the form of a motion, if that makes sense. And I will include that statement that John just said, subject to, all the requirements that we've stated required. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same.
Thank you.
Is that?
Yeah, and just for your knowledge, there is a separate component of the stormwater side, which is the industrial stormwater management permit. That is handled completely by IDEM. We are kind of in the loop on it, but we're not involved in it. The county doesn't handle that permitting. That is a separate thing from what we've been discussing. So I don't know the status of that with IDEM. I know that they've been out there and doing inspections. I don't know the latest yet, but that is another kind of moving part to this discussion. So
But you'll just keep us informed
we
on
can
that.
certainly
That's
keep you in
not
loop. Do you have an update on?
Sure, with the industrial permit, it won't close.
No, you're correct. It doesn't close, but I believe there were violations that, at least in the last couple of inspections, it doesn't. But I know that there's discussion. This is for your understanding if you're asked questions about it, because I know there's discussions about what the moving parts and pieces are. We don't have any influence on whether they are citing, whether IDEM is citing these parts on the industrial side.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I see the next thing here is county engineer.
Nothing else to share unless you have any other questions for me.
You should start bringing a bottle of water up with you.
She may need a bottle of something else.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deuce.
Nothing more for me.
Pardon? Yep. Okay, county surveyor, Flossie Drake Drain.
Rob's gonna report on that.
Just some info, because this is just, and I don't know if any of you all know John. I was out there, of course, we've been getting several breakdowns, doing a lot of work on the drain.
There's 500 north.
6 north, 3 west. That's 2. Okay. Everything we've ever worked on, worked on the clay tile that comes down through here and then it turns here somewhere, and where it goes from there, I'm not sure. Never done any work in this field. This is just all grass swell. Patrick Shooter, the farmer, called me here a while back, and through this grass swell, there was the tile was exposed and was broke. It was a concrete pipe. So we had a couple more breakdowns back here, or excuse me, over here. And so Jeff went in and we fixed that, and we put in a breather over the 30-inch tile there and just replaced about 50 feet of it. Well, when he was out here fixing this hole, he came over here and found another. There's a 30-inch concrete running down through here, and then a 24-inch clip that comes down through here somewhere. And then when you go down here to the outlet, and I thought, honestly, I just thought they came together. I had a camera going there, I just really figured that 24-inch clay would go into the concrete. Down here at the outlet, the concrete comes in here into the head wall, and then there's a 24-inch pipe or opening in the head wall here. And there's a tile that comes through here, and I just assumed it was just big opening and it was outletting. We had to do some work here, and one of the crew guys, he crawled up in there a few feet, and then there was the 24-inch clay coming from the north. So there's 2 pipes there, and I have no idea. And I just didn't know if you guys do anything. We had never talked to, as far as that 30-inch concrete, had never worked on it.
Huh.
So, and then looking through the records and everything, there's nothing. Everything, there's no map showing that there's 2 there, and I didn't know if any of you guys had any ideas.
That's a big tile for not.
That's what me and Jeff were talking about. 30. I would assume that the clay went in before the concrete.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think the 30s to replace the 24.
Could that have?
I don't think so.
Huh.
They're both there.
I'll ask my brother.
Because we went. I took because looking at the.
Say it. Is that 600 north and 300 west? Did you say? Or?
Yes, right here. Because everything that had been done was on a clay tile coming down this way, and then just the old records just shows it turning here. I just assumed, okay, well, at some point they redid this, they rerouted this way, and they just tied that into it. I went in with the camera here and went, a couple hundred feet this way, past where breakdowns had happened before, and there was no tying. So I don't know what's going on.
Well, that's crazy. I can't believe that wouldn't be a county drain as big as it is.
I don't know. I just looked at maps. I haven't got dug into the old legal descriptions to see if there's something happened, but I don't know.
It's a lot of drainage.
Right. So just kind of let you guys know that, the bottom end we got taken care of. Got a couple more breathers. Let's go back there.
So right now we're repairing.
In the swale, of course, this is all tree farm now.
Oh, yeah.
And in the swale right here is where we found, in the 30-inch concrete's out here, and then we found the 24 in the swale here. So we put a breather in there, and then Of course, when it dries up good enough, it gets frozen, my fluid waste come out again and go in there and just see where it goes. Because there's nothing noting where they cross the road here or anything, so.
Wow.
I just didn't know if it started.
And I don't know, I mean, Tom Delph would have,
The blue line curves through that field. Is that Pettigrew's farm?
This
one?
No, over this side, right there.
over
It's
here,
down- Yeah.
It's not letting me click on it.
I don't know who farms that. I think Mr. Shooter.
I think Shooter.
Well, Shooter farms Pettigrew's farms. That's what I'm saying. We've ditched in there many, many years ago, and I knew that there was a clay and a concrete.
I don't know, what Jeff said, he talked to Pat, or Mr. Shooter, and said he didn't know. That's for sure.
I was gonna say it'd be long before Patrick was
Right.
born.
But I mean, just, the folks been out there just to not know it's there, or, I mean, even the contractors said that I had no idea.
Doug Drake would probably know more
That's what
because
I
it
said,
goes up
maybe
and drains a
give it-
lot of his ground.
I mean, is Tom Delph, is that part of the rock farm that sold or the tree guy bought?
Yeah.
Might be.
I mean, maybe Tom Delph might, like say Doug Drake or Tom Delph, maybe.
There we go. Yeah, that is Pettigrew.
Okay.
It was just, the idea is just to define
I
what
think
crosses
between
the
Shooter,
road
Delta,
here, just see where it
and
goes.
Drake, they all should know.
I just wanted to let y'all know.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
You guys are
That's-
welcome to come find a 30-inch tile and light.
But, I mean, the problem with the concrete one was I could only run the camera up so far. I mean, there was that much junk in the bottom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, see, we
Huh.
ditched.
And I was going on my intent
Yeah, I thought
initially was to go out there and back that stuff out, see how far I could get. But by the time I back it all out, the truck's gonna fill up with water and I'm gonna have to go dump, so it's gonna be
Why
a
would
waste
it be
of
on
money.
this?
But it's half full of dirt, the 30's half full of dirt.
I don't wanna say half,
Half, a
but
third,
it's
something.
got
Huh.
a bunch of junk in it, you know.
I don't know.
But I mean, there's a new 50 foot there that's new, coming back from the road northeast, so. I didn't know if any of you guys had, knowledge of that, and I just wanted to let you know it's a little strange situation, because at some points, they're only 100 foot apart.
Hmm.
So, just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Yep.
Miss Lane's, Jessica, I figured she left. You got a lot of grit sticking around here.
I think Mr. Downs.
The stormwater management projects that are all listed at the bottom, is that just kind of a summary?
FYI, we don't have, other
Okay.
than Act 101, we don't have any others that are ready for,
Yeah, I just put that on there just to show what we.
What we were working
what's
on?
going on.
Okay, great. I didn't want to bypass that. Miss Laney's, any other business? Miss Laney's
Yeah,
business?
Kim and I has been talking about mowing and spraying because it's getting out of hand. We started in June 1st and we're talking about moving it up next year. So if any committee's bitching about spraying and mowing.
Oh, moving it earlier in the
Yeah,
season.
earlier in the season, but yeah, I've been several of them that are getting out of hand. And we just basically started mowing and spraying in June 1st.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then I was gonna bring up about Ollie Pittsburgh, but we already talked about it, so.
Okay. Yeah, and if you can get something put together, like I say, maybe we can have that conversation and get,
Yeah, I think it needs to be moved up. I mean, if you look someplace, most places it's completely overgrown.
Mhm. Okay.
Is there anything on Hunsinger Farm stuff, that relocation or all that? Are they,
They sent a copy of an agreement, I know, to Jessica and I and Jeff. Jeff's reviewed it and I believe it was okay or satisfactory, whatever. I don't recall now if we were on the, hey Jessica, I know the last time we talked with either Sean or Lance on that Huntsinger Farms, was it that after we got the agreement, we were gonna try to see if one of y'all wanted to.
I just want to see if I
talk
get you
about
back down here to the podium.
So here's where we left Hunsinger Farms. Make it like it. The discussion was that we were going to consider vacating the upper portion of that regulated drain, and then we were going to ask Arbor Homes to enter into a mutual drain agreement with Dr. Lau to ensure that he did have a positive outlet for his stuff. Not that we know if it's working or not, but just so that we didn't leave him out of the loop. We have a legal description from Arbor Homes. We have the, for the regulated drain. Now, the part that Angie and I were just discussing this morning is, my guess is they only wrote the legal description for their portion of the regulated drain and not for the Dr. Lau portion. So I don't know what we need to do there. I don't know how that works. And then the second part of it that they needed to provide us was the draft agreement with Dr. Lau. While we've been in this meeting, Arbor has reached out to us and asked if we are talking to Dr. Lau or if they are supposed to talk to Dr. Lau. So we need guidance on that. And then I think the next step would be to confirm which portion of the regulated drain is actually being vacated and if we need more legal description or if we have what we need, and then to move forward with the process. Is that correct?
I don't know why we would be talking to Dr. Lau. They're the ones that are going to have to hammer out whatever agreement there is.
I think it was because they have not had luck with getting him to even talk to them. And so they were hoping that maybe somebody from the county could help facilitate a discussion. Not that it's coming from the county, but just to help with that. And maybe not, that's totally fine. They were very skeptical about whether they could get Dr. Lau to agree to this mutual drain agreement, which is what the board would require of them, if that makes sense. So
I guess the only other perspective would be that if we were notifying Dr. Lau that we were entering into an agreement with Arbor Springs, and if he wanted to continue to have access to the county drain, this mutual drain would be beneficial to him. You know, is he opposed or in favor? Because it's really, he's not going to have an alternative once we enter the agreement. So that would be my thought on that
The
part.
assumption he thinks he can stop them doing that.
okay. So just a letter from
Yeah, I think a
Jeff
letter
or
just
something.
telling him what we're going to do, and it's really, we're not saying there's no alternative, but there's really, his alternative is to agree to a mutual drain that he would have access to the county drain through, so
Do
it's
we
really
wanna-
beneficial.
Do we want to ask him to come to the next drainage board meeting?
Paul sent me a copy of
That seemed to work for the others that we sent letters to last week.
Yeah, and you could put it in the letter and just
Probably
say
ought
you're
to ask
welcome.
for Leon too, because Leon kind of speaks for.
We can copy Leon on it.
So, yeah, I'm just kind of telling them, you know, that's the path that we're taking, and that we want them to have drainage access, and that's what our plan is. So we want them to be informed and understand that they may want to make, be in on that agreement with Arbor Springs.
Do they need to make a motion for us to contact them, or we just do it? Okay. We can do that.
Okay, wonderful. Anything else? Any hearings that we have
Court
coming up?
proceedings?
Pardon me?
I was still wondering about this mutual drain thing. Is it ever gonna go away, or what's going
It
on?
will eventually go away. Fleet radio silence on the other side. So we'll put it to bed and then they can reveal it again or not.
Well, they did that last time.
Communication, yeah, the last communication I had with them was, you know, again, a ballpark on price, what it would take to fix the thing rather than pay lawyers. And,
We all thought that was a really good idea a couple years ago.
So when you say it'll be put to bed, will it be put to bed in a position where we send our contractor out there and fix it?
yes, I mean, that's what.
And just say,
State law says that, or they would have to file a post a bond in the amount of the total repair to that.
so whenever, I assume the total repair is only to repair the tile, not, we can't put in there damage that's happened because of this situation.
Correct, is to remove the obstruction. That would be, yeah.
And any damage would have to come from the damaged people, right? In another lawsuit. But after our lawsuit is settled and we win and they become guilty parties of allowing it, doesn't that allow the other people then to have a real leg up on them?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Ultimately, the Hancock County case has to be cleared out and then they'll have to decide if they're going to appeal that or not. The Hancock County Court has already ruled that we win. The only issue left is that amount of repair.
And Angie probably informed you that we had a letter from Mr. Slaybaugh. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
Statement or what?
Yeah, what exactly was that?
A list. Okay. So there's nothing required of us at this point.
Not right now, no. I will get a hearing date for our next meeting in Hancock County to finish that up, or an agreed judgment.
Yeah.
They can agree to the amount. If they'd like to appeal it, we can go on from there.
But we jumped from Slayball back to, you went back to court. Okay,
Slave off.
just let it
There will
ride.
be there'll be another hearing on that one prior to you guys getting to the harvest.
Okay. Any hearings or maintenance, anything that we have scheduled or out there that we're trying to do?
Before you're done, I think, Greg, or do you want to come? You raised your hand just a little bit.
He wants to come down.
Yes,
say
sir.
something.
I'll come on down. Oh.
On the mutual drain thing, since that's been so long, do we need to get another estimate for cost to do that work since it's been
Yep.
that long?
Probably.
Yep.
Probably.
But how soon do we want to get it?
So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, let me
Okay,
get that hearing date set, Rob,
just let
and
me
I'll
know.
keep in the loop.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
Good idea.
Good point.
Round up.
Yeah.
Greg Valentine, 5297 South 800W. I'm here to thank y'all for fixing my washout in the corner there. I know I've bugged you for 3.5 years, and I usually use Justin Culper for all of our ditching, but this guy, is it Farr? Is that his name, Farr?
Jeff
They did a
Farr.
beautiful job. They even seeded it 2 days before I planted that field. And they did it right. And I think they're doing that bridge north of me too, John. You putting a new bridge in right there by Ferticum?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
It wasn't a new bridge, but there was
Yeah.
some repair work.
Yeah.
They just finished that.
The next one will be the one right there by my house. When our boys at 3D messed this curve in my creek up, they poured that new concrete over that culvert they put in. The next day drove a 40-ton excavator on it and cracked all 3 corners of that. I mean, it wasn't even 24 hours. And they could have put some additive in there. But anyway, thank you very much for fixing it. I got 2 things I want to talk to you about. Some of you may have heard about this. It's the 102 acres. I'll get it back. That's the 102 acres right across from TLC Church on State Road 13 for the auto salvage. Don't say junkyard. They told us 10 times it's not a junkyard. It's the same one that was proposed by Bain Equipment on 38 by Pendleton, and then proposed up here across the MI. And now it's proposed for town lapel. It bumps into Mr. Purdue's ground over there, and it's actually kind of high, and I'm sure all the water runs right into Sand Creek and then Thorpe Creek. 50 some acres of gravel they're going to put down, or stone. These are the people, and maybe you've heard this, I won't dwell on it, but they take junk cars, strip all the parts off, put them in their racks in the bins in that building they're showing there, and then they set the carcass out there, and there'll be somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000, as high as 8,000 carcasses out there of Monte Carlos and Camaros and stuff like that. And eventually they junk them, but they drain all the fluids ahead of time, take care of all that, and they were showing us at Falkirk Regional Waste. That's how I knew about that. They came to us at Falkirk Regional Waste, wanted to know if they could hook a sewer up. We do have a sewer that runs to TLC Church, so they could hook into that for 50 employees. But this worries me because it's sitting right on top of the big aquifer. My dad used to talk about that running from down there about Love's Truck Stop north, and Jeff and I talked about it this morning a little bit. I'm not sure where it ends. Dad always thought it at least comes to where Lapel drilled those wells, and used to be South Madison Utilities, now it's Citizens. Their wells must be sitting on top of this. So they claim you guys have blessed it. Have you even seen them?
No.
No.
She should have sat in the front row.
Yeah.
No, not in front row.
You can run, but you can't hide.
I like Jess.
Angie and I had a call with a potential development that is using the code name Project Bumper in the parcel that Mr. Valentine is referencing. It was a conceptual discussion in nature. They wanted to understand what the permitting process would be. We explained to them the nature of the drainage board, how our process worked, the fact that yes, you are in the incorporated area, but you still need the drainage board requirements. You have to go through that process, that you would be, you'd have permits to connect to the regulated drain, you have to maintain the easement, and so forth. We also discussed a little bit about the nature of their proposed operations, and we told them that obviously a business such as that would be under scrutiny because of water quality. There would need to be the industrial stormwater components and so forth. So that is where the discussion ended. They were going to follow back up with us when it came time to move forward, and to date, I have had no other communication with them on that. So that's.
So I got a question for you, Jeff. As this board sits here and we look at this type of development, which she's referring to as possible, highly more likely contamination possibilities and stuff, do we have a clause in our, or some way of jumping from our normal runoff and here's how you hold the water, blah, blah, into a more highly industrial type of discussion with some high-tech cleaning material? I mean, where can we go here?
It's 53 pages, but I've looked, I think our MS.
So yeah, there's a couple parts to that. I mean, first of all, they will have to permit the industrial stormwater through the state. We don't have involvement in that. Okay, we can express concerns to the state about that, but that is, like Brandy said earlier, related to Drew's parts, that's independent of the county. We don't get involved in that. But what we do have is in our current ordinance, and likely in our ordinances under development right now, there is a provision that on impaired water bodies, the board can choose to impose higher standards. And it's very vague, probably intentionally, but that is a provision that's in there. Now, I would imagine there's a process you'd have to go through to determine what that, there's probably a definition of impairment, and you'd have a process to go through, whether that means water quality or water quantity. I'm sure there's a lot of things to work through there, but you do have that option, that tool. Is that a fair way of saying it?
Yes.
Okay, now the next question I have, the town of LaPel actually has a committee, and at one time I was on the committee for this aquifer. Is that something that the town of LaPel, and you can't probably answer this, but you might be able to, have they brought up the idea that this is over their aquifer, that it is a possible polluting option of their aquifer?
I haven't heard that discussion.
They know it.
Okay.
I brought it up. And by the way, LaPel is voting on this July 13th. And that may be a preliminary vote. I don't know, but.
Do they have a wellhead protection area established?
North of there's a sign over on my property about a wellhead protection.
I'd be curious
Bill
how
Hobbs
far
put 'em
that.
up when he had South Madison.
I'd be curious how far that wellhead protection area
I would imagine
extends.
the July vote is a zoning vote.
But see, I didn't mean to interrupt you. They go into this thing, they've done it about 3 times. We take all the fluids. There'll be no brake fluid, antifreeze. We take all that out before we ever set them out there. But, I came to this board and complaining about smock auction. Oh, we'll take all the fluids out or there'll be no leaks. Walk across Smock's auction field. It's black. It's all motor oil, transmission fluid.
We're not a board of fools. We
No.
know what reality is.
Anyway, I won't dwell on that. I know you guys have been here a long time. I got one other, don't run off.
No.
Supposedly, when they came to us at Falkirk Regional Waste on this Ingalls Crossing that somebody mentioned, you guys have already blessed this new bridge across Thorpe Creek and all that.
No.
Oh, I'm getting tired of that last word.
Yeah.
Where do these people get all this stuff, Jessica?
So Ingalls Crossing is the one that Burke is currently reviewing. DNR blessed the bridge. What we have conceptually told them was that if they met DNR's requirements, as far as clearance goes, that we would likely be in agreement with DNR on that. That's DNR's area of specialty for the bridge crossing over the regulated zone. But we have the review of the site plan is under way. That one is more complicated than what we can do in-house, which is why we're having her do that review. It has not been approved, but it's being reviewed.
Right, and we gave conceptual approval so they could develop plans.
Correct.
But we have not given final approval.
And they're aware that it's almost all in a floodplain.
Yes. That was why
Almost all of it.
That's why we've been working through this with Burke, because, and Greg, I'm happy to talk to you about this. They've gone above and beyond as far as with extra modeling and with extra oversized detention, extra provisions. And Burke is still skeptical about it, but that's what they're working through right now.
So here's why I'm here. I know you've heard me talk about Nuco and the retention ponds that are all grown up. And I just happen to have Exhibit A here. You can pass it around. That is me standing outside the 8-foot chain link fence looking at the pond. So I told them, and their developer, their engineer that was with them, this would be a perfect time for them to get their next door neighbors to dig those 2 retention ponds out that basically aren't even that deep anymore. And because all their water that's running over on James Riffey's farm now is going to be running right in the new gas station. If you can't quite see it there, but there's like 8 pumps and a convenience store with a Subway or something in it. It is 100 feet from these retention ponds. So the 8 or 9 acres of James Riffey's that drains out, that washes out every year, and Jeff, you know that area well, it's all going to be running right in their gas station. And maybe that'd be a way to get it fixed, I don't know. And that does, Jeff, you and I talked about that briefly, that does come back to the county, right? So 1973 or whatever it was when this was approved, my dad was on this board then, and there's a lot of discussion about everything. It was 5 acres of hard surface. That's what those 2 retention ponds serviced. Now there's 15 acres of hard surface. I mean, most of it's gravel, but next time you drive by there, you can't see this from the road. You gotta walk down through the field. But anyway, that's my concern.
Just a curiosity on a retention pond like that, is there any requirement for how it should be maintained or got to remain functional?
Yeah, our ordinance does say that the maintenance is responsibility of the property owner. We can do enforcement on that at the drainage board level.
Can or can't?
We can.
We can.
That's not typically a route that has been followed because of the rabbit hole that would be. But if that is a concern, we can certainly talk to them.
So, Greg Morlock, Ingles' attorney, he had Triad send a letter. Lou's their engineer for Ingles. He sent a letter to him asking him to dig that out and to tile it over to Thorpe Creek. And I told you guys some of this. It's like 400 and some feet. They said they don't have to drain their ponds. It's their ponds. They maintain them. Well, they're not maintaining them.
I would think that would probably be, I would say if the drainage board is going to take action on it, that probably needs to come from a complaint from the property owner that's being negatively impacted. That would be my thought, Jeff.
But you got to remember, German Baptists will not write anything. They will not complain. Right, Jeff?
They will not.
Now, this new property owner, this may be an opportune time to get it fixed, because I'm telling you, he's going to be flooded. Every seasonal high, not like we had the last 2 days, but you get a gully washer. Hey, thanks for listening. I know, again, thank you for fixing our area.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other business come before the board today? Good morning, Brandy. You're very quiet and supportive of Jessica and the board. Okay, is there a motion for, Angie, do you have anything else that you need to take action on?
Well, yeah, I will put it. Because of ATM, as he stated, they were going off DC concrete. And I can bring it up here. I'm just questioning because of how this area has been, and everybody's like, well, they let me do it. Calhoun He was the guy from PUD. He didn't say his name, but I found out who he was afterwards. But anyway, he's never been before the board with anything that he's done out there. Part of the pond I know is in the floodway. I know none of anything that he's done out there has come before the board.
Didn't he have rip in the ditch or something at one
He
point?
was told by
Triad
that,
Filled
if I'm
in?
not mistaken, the county didn't have a problem with him putting rock shoot dams in the Pettigrew here on the,
Right in
down
there.
in here.
Yeah.
If I'm not, yeah, I don't think you can see it on this area. But anyway, if we're gonna do it for one or two of those out there, do we, and I'm not trying to open up a can, but anything else, but if we're gonna start enforcing stuff, do we need to contact him and enforce what, not only with the pond, my question was, and I asked or said this, I'm assuming when he dug out that pond, and I know Rob can kind of say this, going back to the Levi Harger on the Sherritt Farms deal, they've moved all this dirt right into our easement, right at the edge of the ditch. That used to be somewhat flat out there. On that north side, it's like this.
Well, he's been hauling, there's been truckloads after truckloads.
No, I know. Regardless of what,
He's putting dirt in.
I know that.
Huh.
But I'm just saying that if we're gonna make ATM, and I don't even know whatever happened with Sherritt Farms, but it's just a
That's
question.
a good question.
Is he
Just a
putting dirt
question.
in the floodway?
I haven't been back.
So I was
there.
out there. I don't know exactly where the floodway line is, but they certainly moved dirt in the floodplain. And that's the same thing that ATM did. They're, like what I said about the ATM site, there's a lot of area out there that is bare dirt. There's piles of something, whether it's fill dirt or scrap dirt, I don't know.
Bunch of half-assed people coming out there and doing everything.
Okay,
Their
so,
pond actually looks very nice for what it's worth. It's got a very well-established bank of riprap, but then it's bare seeded above that. I don't know where the pond goes. I would assume it goes into the regulated drain. I don't believe that was permitted.
No, no.
So she's right. I mean, if you're going to enforce on ATM, we can do the same thing with DC. I can send it almost literally the exact same letter to them.
is that the floodplain?
Yes.
Yeah, that site is, there's no way that any of that should ever have been allowed to happen.
And I honestly don't know how much he gave to Triad, because he started doing a lot of that out there before anything, or Ingalls, I should say.
How much information he gave to Ingles, you mean, or?
Right.
Is Triad an engineering company?
Yes, Triad's an engineering firm that Ingalls has traditionally
Okay.
used for their stormwater
Okay.
reviews.
Okay,
I think we have a reputation or a situation where a lot of things that Triad has done has been contrary to what this board's
We do, and I think a lot of that, to be honest, has been resolved, Jeff, because this all occurred as I came on to the county and Neil came in at Ingalls, and neither of us were really educated on processes at the time. It was about a year ago, really, when the ATM was brought to our attention, that we started to understand the dynamic, and it was really with Interpark, where we found that Triad was approving things that conflicted with the county regulations. We didn't know prior to that, and we really didn't have any reason to suspect it. And stormwater is not Neil's area, so he was relying very heavily on that. I think Ingalls Crossing is a perfect example of how that has not happened again. But we do have these kind of legacy projects to clean up. I think moving forward, it's very different. We have a very much better relationship with Ingalls than we did in the past. But we do have these kind of lingering things that are impacting other projects, if that makes sense.
So Jeff, after a project or a situation, let's take that one right there for example. It's there, it's been there for a little while, it was put there totally against all regulations. How much power do we have to go back in and really do anything?
We do. It's no different than if I build a house in the city and don't get a building permit. The city, they literally get to the point where the house would have to be removed. You know, practically speaking, enforcement authorities don't want to do that. It's an economic waste. You don't, someone can't just race past you and say, aha, I beat you. We still can go in there and enforce our ordinance.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of things there that he could change and fix that would help us be a little happier.
Well, let's sleep on that one until the next meeting and put the next.
Maybe we can all have a little drive.
Yeah.
Evening
Yeah.
drive with our wives and go
Yeah.
around and say,
Oh, yes,
You
they'll
can
be
go
so
down there and
excited.
My wife loves that stuff.
I call that a crop dirt, Jeff. When I got crop dirt, I'll go down there.
Say go there, then you can go over to Taylor's and get a nice dinner.
Well, yeah, there is a nice restaurant down there.
That's about the only way you can get them talked into.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. If you get, just tell them
Well,
you're gonna
we will, I'll,
A
you know,
limo with an open bar is not the only way I'd get it.
we'll do some exploring and take that into consideration, you know, because it's.
Is that a board expense?
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't get $100.
Is
Or
the
bar
next
and
board meeting being held at Taylor's?
Yeah.
Oh, we can do that. Cause then I just have to
They have that
go a
room.
quarter mile to home.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they want like $750 for it.
for drinking.
You get it for meetings.
that is expensive.
Neil gets it.
Well, 'cause
All
You know
right.
what? I'm gonna talk to Neil then.
Any other business that you have, and we will take those into consideration to, you know, because it's, you know, it's kind of frustrating and it's aggravating and, it's kind of a mess down there. Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yes, sir. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
I
Meeting
didn't
is
want to
adjourned.
hold